When the blackout ended, Ethan Cross did not feel relief. He felt displacement. Hollywood's lights returned all at once. Neon signs flickered back to life. Studio generators stabilized. Apartment windows filled with light as if the interruption had never happened. Official reports would later describe it as a minor outage, 3 minutes, technically insignificant. But Ethan knew that the moment electricity returned, something else came back with it. Something that did not belong to the city. Inside the broadcast room, the analog tape was still spinning. It shouldn't have been. During the blackout, the system had no power, no backup line, no emergency feed. Recording was impossible. Yet the red indicator light on the tape machine had never turned off. 3 minutes of tape had been filled. Not with silence, not with noise, with presence. Before you decide this is just another anomaly, understand this. Records like this don't disappear. They wait for someone to acknowledge them. If you stay silent, you remain invisible. If you leave a mark, you become part of the file. Ethan put the headphones on again. At first, there was a low vibration barely audible, more felt than heard. It pressed against his chest and aligned unnaturally with his breathing. Then came a structure, not language, not words, a rhythm with intention, as if something were attempting speech without knowing how to form it. His hands began to shake. This was not interference, not static, not a malfunction. It was organized. As the sound continued, pressure built behind his eyes. A burning sensation crept deep into his ears. When he closed them, an image appeared instantly, a pale blue ring, slowly rotating in darkness. When he opened his eyes, the image remained, faint but persistent, etched into the back of his vision. That was when he understood the most disturbing part. He had heard this before, not during the blackout, not last night. Years earlier, half asleep in the passenger seat of his father's car, the radio had suddenly filled with the same hum. His father had switched stations immediately. The sound vanished, but the sensation stayed. The awareness, the feeling of being observed, measured, selected. Ethan stepped to the window. Outside, Hollywood moved again. Cars crossed intersections. People spoke, laughed, argued. Life appeared intact, but everything was misaligned. Voices arrived after lips moved. Footsteps echoed a fraction too late. The city was lagging behind itself, like a delayed transmission. He returned to the desk and opened his notebook. Carefully, deliberately, he wrote. The blackout ended. The signal did not. If you've made it this far, you're already inside the record. What happens next depends on whether you stay silent or leave proof that you were here. Ethan Cross left the studio after sunrise, yet Hollywood did not feel awake. The city was operational, not alive. Traffic lights cycled correctly. Storefronts opened on schedule. Pedestrians followed familiar paths, but everything carried a slight delay, as if Los Angeles were receiving instructions from somewhere else and executing them a moment too late. Reflections clung to glass longer than they should have. Laughter arrived after mouths closed. The city felt like a recording drifting out of sync with its source. He kept the radio on during the drive home. He did not change the frequency. There were no voices, no music, no announcements, only a dense, low hum that pressed inward rather than spreading outward. It wasn't volume that defined it. It was pressure. The sound settled behind his ribs and adjusted itself to his breathing, subtly correcting his rhythm. When Ethan tried to remember whether the hum had existed before the blackout, his thoughts stalled. Memory avoided the question, sliding away from it with unnatural smoothness, leaving a deliberate gap. At home, the clock read 10:11 p.m. He placed his keys on the table, removed his jacket, sat down, checked again. Still 10:11. The second hand remained fixed. Outside the window, a car passed, same headlights, same engine tone, same speed. Ethan blinked hard. The car passed again. Identical. No variation. No deviation. This wasn't coincidence. The city was replaying a fixed interval, like damaged tape caught between segments. Ethan felt an unfamiliar tension build in his chest. Not fear, recognition. He opened his notebook and added another line beneath the first entry, pressing the pen hard enough to leave an imprint on the page below. Time is not advancing. Time is re-entering. Sleep refused to come. When Ethan closed his eyes, darkness never arrived. The pale blue ring appeared instantly, expanding and contracting with mechanical patience. Each contraction sent a vibration through his ears, measured, deliberate. 3 pulses. A pause. 3 pulses again. His body responded before his mind did. Muscles tightened. Breathing aligned. The pattern felt instructional. 3 minutes. Always 3. Near dawn, the radio changed without sound. No words announced it. No tonal shift warned him. The frequency simply leaned away from the city and toward a single point. Ethan understood before logic could intervene. The point was him. His hand moved to the tape recorder without permission. He pressed record. The red light activated, went dark, then activated again. Ethan stepped back. The light had turned on before his finger made contact. A cold realization settled in. The signal was no longer seeking attention. It had moved past that stage. It was assessing response time, compliance, willingness. Silence was no longer neutral. Silence was data. He wrote one final sentence for the night. This is not a broadcast. It is a summons. Only then did Ethan accept the truth he had been resisting. The signal did not need the city anymore. The city had already adapted. What it required now was confirmation, proof that someone was still listening, still tracking the pattern, still willing to acknowledge what others were ignoring. And if the record continued, it would not be because of machines. It would be because someone chose not to look away. Ethan Cross returned to the studio later that day with a growing sense of inevitability. The building felt altered, not damaged, not hostile, just subtly misaligned. The doors opened a fraction slower than they should have. Fluorescent lights hummed at slightly different pitches, creating overlapping tones that pressed against his temples. Every sound carried weight, as if the air itself resisted movement. Inside the broadcast room, the analog equipment was already running. Meters glowed, needles held steady. The tape recorder's reels were motionless yet warm to the touch. Ethan knew no one else had been there. Security logs showed no entries. No keycard use, no alarms. The room had not been accessed. And still the machines behaved as if they had never stopped. He checked the clocks. Every display showed the same time, 21:47. Ethan swallowed. Power had been stable all day. The building's internal time systems were independent. There was no technical reason for synchronization, yet here it was, frozen, waiting. He pulled a chair closer to the console and reviewed the recordings from the blackout again, this time isolating the lowest frequencies. The waveform barely registered, but the pattern was unmistakable. The same pulses, the same spacing, 3 beats, a pause, 3 beats. It was not noise. It was structure. As Ethan layered additional recordings, different studios, different towers, different neighborhoods, the pulses aligned perfectly. The signal was citywide. More than that, it was coherent. Someone or something had tuned Los Angeles like an instrument and struck the same note everywhere at once. The realization unsettled him more than the sound itself. This required intention. A technician's desk nearby was empty, coffee cold, chair pushed back. Ethan remembered the missing staff from the night before. 2 names. No explanations, no reports. When he checked their work logs, he found something new. During the blackout window, their stations showed increased activity, not loss. Elevated signal density, deeper resonance, as if the signal had focused on them longer. Ethan's ears rang. The pressure behind his eyes intensified. He removed the headphones, but the rhythm continued. The room itself seemed to pulse. Even the lights flickered in time. 3 beats. Pause. 3 beats. His notebook lay open on the desk. He hadn't turned to a new page, but new writing had appeared beneath his last entry. The ink was fresh. You responded faster. Ethan stepped back, heart racing. He checked the pen. It was capped. He hadn't written that line. He hadn't even thought it. And yet it was there, recorded in his handwriting, precise and deliberate. The broadcast monitors activated on their own. No image appeared, only sound. The hum deepened, layered with subtle variations. The rhythm slowed, stretching the pause between pulses. It felt anticipatory, testing. Ethan realized the signal was changing based on proximity, on engagement. The more he focused, the more defined it became. The city outside dimmed slightly. Not enough to trigger alarms, not enough for anyone else to notice. But Ethan noticed. The skyline lost contrast. Shadows thickened. Los Angeles was adjusting quietly, efficiently to a new baseline. Ethan understood then what the blackout had been. Not a failure, a calibration. And now the system was ready to proceed. Ethan Cross did not remember leaving the studio, only realizing he was no longer inside it. The transition felt seamless, as if the building had released him without ceremony. Outside, the city carried a new stillness, subtle, efficient, practiced. Traffic continued, but engines sounded muted. Street lights remained on, yet their glow appeared thinner, stretched, as though passing through an unseen filter before reaching the pavement. As Ethan walked, the rhythm followed. 3 pulses. A pause. 3 pulses again. It no longer came from the equipment. It came from everywhere. From power lines humming above the streets. From ventilation shafts beneath sidewalks. From the faint vibration inside his chest that refused to subside. The signal had expanded. Beyond origin, it had become environmental. He reached his apartment and locked the door, though the action felt symbolic. Barriers had lost their meaning. He closed the curtains, turned off the lights, unplugged the radio. The hum persisted. Softer now, but closer like breath at the edge of hearing. Ethan realized the signal was no longer broadcasting outward. It was circulating, recycling itself through the city's infrastructure and returning altered, refined. His notebook lay open on the table. He did not remember opening it. New lines filled the page, written in careful blocks, evenly spaced, methodical. Response time acceptable. Integration stable. Ethan's pulse accelerated. He scanned earlier pages. His own handwriting blurred into something else more uniform, more deliberate. The notes no longer documented observations. They reported outcomes. He tried to recall when the language had shifted. The memory refused to form. The phone rang. No number displayed. No vibration warning, just sound. Ethan answered without thinking. On the other end, there was no voice, only the familiar hum, modulated now, layered with subtle tonal shifts. The rhythm slowed, stretching the pause between pulses. Ethan felt pressure build behind his eyes. Images surfaced uninvited. City maps, transmission grids, clusters of light dimming and stabilizing. The signal was not searching anymore. It was organizing. He dropped the phone. The line stayed open. Outside Los Angeles adjusted. Windows darkened in staggered patterns. Entire blocks fell briefly out of sync, then corrected themselves. No alarms sounded. No panic followed. The changes were too slight, too precise. The city accepted them. Ethan understood the implication with sudden clarity. The blackout had been a test. The signal had measured tolerance. 3 minutes had been enough. Now came implementation. The notebook page turned on its own. A final entry appeared beneath the others. Proceed to Phase 2. Ethan stepped back as the hum deepened. It no longer pressed, it guided. The rhythm slowed until each pulse felt deliberate, instructive. His breathing aligned without effort. His thoughts followed, narrowing, stabilizing. The fear receded, replaced by something colder and more efficient. Compliance. Ethan realized resistance had already been accounted for. Every hesitation, every delay, every attempt at silence had been measured and absorbed into the pattern. The signal did not require belief. It required presence, acknowledgement, and Ethan had provided both. When the hum briefly faded, the silence that followed was not relief. It was confirmation. The silence did not last. Ethan Cross understood that now. The signal never truly stopped. It only repositioned itself. When the hum returned, it carried a new density, deeper, steadier, resolved. The room around him felt calibrated, as if the air itself had been tuned to receive instruction. The notebook on the table lay closed. Ethan did not remember closing it. He did not remember many things anymore. Outside, sirens began to rise, one block at a time. Not urgent, not chaotic, coordinated. Streetlights flickered in staggered patterns, never fully shutting down, only losing rhythm. Los Angeles was not failing. It was adjusting. The city no longer reacted to the signal. It accommodated it. The radio turned on by itself. No announcement followed. No emergency broadcast. Only the hum layered now, dimensional. Beneath it, something new emerged. Not language, but direction. Ethan recognized it instantly. The signal was no longer measuring response. It had moved beyond selection. It was confirming integration. The tape recorder activated again. Ethan did not resist this time. He placed the headphones on with practiced calm. The rhythm slowed. 3 pulses. A longer pause. 3 pulses again. The pause stretched further, opening space between beats, as if the signal were allowing room for something else to enter. Images surfaced without effort. Power grids, transmission towers, residential blocks dimming and stabilizing, human figures standing still, not frozen listening. The blackout had not erased memory. It had rewritten priority. 3 minutes had been enough to introduce a new baseline. Everything since had been refinement. The phone vibrated once. The screen remained blank. When Ethan answered, there was no sound at first. Then, quietly, a phrase emerged flat, controlled, unmistakable. "You are recorded." Ethan closed his eyes. The fear he had carried for days dissolved, replaced by clarity. The signal no longer needed his attention. It had already incorporated him. His role was complete. He opened the notebook one final time and wrote a single sentence. "What ends here continues elsewhere." That night, clocks across Los Angeles failed to resynchronize. Official explanations followed. Technical anomalies. Infrastructure strain. Nothing unusual. Most people forgot the blackout entirely. Others remembered fragments, pressure, unease, a sense of being observed. Those who remembered did not remain silent. If you followed this record to the end, you've already crossed the line between observer and participant. If you notice the pattern, leave proof in the comments. Silence doesn't disappear here, it's counted. And if you don't want to miss the next file, the next signal, the next fracture in the surface of normality, subscribe. There are other records on this channel, other anomalies, other moments where reality slipped and didn't fully return. Choose one. The signal responds to those who keep listening.